My name is Lucia Pavone, and I wanted to give thanks to Dr. V. Entheoplex, Tammerian Institute, for this incredible opportunity to share from the heart, from the mind, from the wisdom of sacred technology. And before we start, I really appreciated the acknowledgement of Baba Kalindi, and I'd also like to name the acknowledgement of being on the land of the native people of the Shawnee, I believe, and then Miami. So I invite you all to just take a sacred pause and find your breath and invite in the energy of the people of this land. So healing sexual and ancestral trauma with somatic sexology and psilocybin. Two very taboo topics: sexuality, sexual energy, and psychedelics. And guess what? I get to put them together. So once again, I'm a somatic sex educator, Dal pelvic practitioner, sexological body worker, and mushroom surveyor. I'd like to think that the information that I'm sharing comes not from necessarily or solely the journey I've taken through this lifetime, but definitely and most certainly through multiple lifetimes. And my own journeys with high doses of sacred technology have surely shown me the ancient technology that was written on the pyramid walls around the sacredness of our sacred bodies or sexuality. So I may be imparting information that seems new, but truly this is ancient wisdom. I want to give thanks to my mentors, Baba Murubaki, Dr. Juan Kosturkiri, my Unc, Baba Laz, Amber Jayante, Welcome Consensus, Institute for the Study of Somatic Sex Education, which have all poured into me, and I am here because of Baba Muru, so thank you, gratitude. And of course, my ancestors, this is Familia Pavone. I am first generation in this country, and I have a long, rich history. That is actually my mom, that little girl eating grapes down there, and my mother's side of the family. This is me in 1992, where I came to Sicily for the first time and had my own first Kundalini awakening at that time, which I didn't recognize till many, many years later. And in 2018, I returned, where I led a beautiful sacred retreat called Surrender in Central Sicily, and took all of my wisdom and many women to Sicily to discover their wisdom as well. And the why, where there's always a reason why we follow our purpose in our sacred journey. This is my baby. This is Zafira Tallulah, and you can see we come from the same cloth, and my mama too. So healing the sacred feminine lineage, the mother line is where a lot of our imprints come through, and this wisdom continues. And so we do have a rich genetic history, and my own journey around discovering my ancestral wisdom in the process of healing my ancestral trauma has been rich. Okay, what is a somatic sex educator? Has anybody ever heard that term, somatic sex educator, before? Okay, great. So somatic sex education is a trauma-informed, body-based, aka somatic, soma means the living body, sex therapy. Although I am not a therapist, I do not have that kind of degree, and I'm very grateful for that, because there are a code of ethics that therapists have to go by that do not match with this line of I don't want to say work, with this particular modality. So I teach through body-based experiences to help nurture and deepen and awaken the sensual self. That can include touch, body-informed, consent-based one-way touch, or two-way touch even, depending on who I'm working with. So in many senses, this is not a new modality. The ancient priestesses of the temples of Philae, the temple of Dendera in Egypt, and as well as the Hore in ancient Greek and Roman times, were all sacred intimates. And so we use our own energy to channel divine energy through our bodies. So Soma includes the full living body, so not just enlightening the inner pod, what I call the inner apothecary, which is brain-based and scientific-based through the polyvagal theory, but also the ancient wisdom. Okay, so energy of trauma is primarily stored in the muscles and fascia of our body. So this is the representation of where trauma might be stored in your body. And it'd be fair enough to say this is where your wisdom is stored too. So for as much trauma as there is in your body, there is wisdom. Now, going back just a little bit, like why did I even come into this space of figuring out like how to heal sexual trauma in others? And so it really came from my own journey. Back in 2000, after the birth of my daughter, Sophia, I had gone through 4-day labors with the intention of having a home birth, and the final destination was a cesarean section. And what happened during that time was beyond what I could really comprehend. As I was being opened, I felt all of the trauma of all of my ancestors flood into my body. I felt disconnected from my own sexuality, and I wanted to figure out what was going on. So I worked with women, first in supporting them to have vaginal birth after cesarean. I worked as a birth educator, birth photographer, and then started the International Cesarean Awareness Network in Santa Cruz, California, which was where I was living at the time. And through that, I also started a path with my husband on, his name is Trevor. We are no longer together. We were on a path of understanding divine sensual connection. So we became sensual researchers in female orgasm in 2003, lived in an intentional community, practiced and wrote and shared and taught for many years on this practice of extended orgasm. And so orgasm, to me, is not necessarily symbiotic with the climax. And this is very important information, and I'll share with you a little bit more why. Okay, ancestral trauma is real. So trauma can leave a chemical mark on a person's genes, which can be passed on to future generations. This is called epigenetics. And so I know Baba Muru often talks about epigenetics, but this is a huge part of how I utilize this information and why I do what I do, because there's such an imprint within our bodies, and a lot of that imprint is stored in the pelvic region, in the muscles. But because we live in these very colonized bodies, where we are told that our sexuality is wrong, where sexual energy is wrong, and because a lot of this is passed on through, our lines, our lineage, and all of us have some type of imprint within our body. And so how do we actually access this imprint, which is stored in the body, when we don't have access to that area because of other traumas? So this process of, the body protecting itself is called armoring. And so one of the things I do as a sexological body worker is I support people to de-armor their bodies. And this is done through breath work, this is done through touch, and in my practice, I utilize psilocybin microdosing as a vehicle and a technology to support the body to come back into its full sensual capacity. Most of us are walking around completely in atrophy in our genitals. When I say most of us, I look at the big picture of the worldview. And this is because the body is made to protect you. The body's only function really is to protect you. And so if your body senses, if your autonomic nervous system senses a trigger or something that is going on in and around you, it will stop and it will protect you. And this is where we get fight, flight, freeze, appease. And this is what we talk about with the body protecting us. So it gets triggered. So when people come to me, there's a lot of reasons why people might come to me, and one of them might be sexual trauma, relationship trauma, or people don't even know what's going on or why they can't access that area. Or in relationships, they've stopped having intimate connection with partners, or with people with, penises. Maybe there's erectile dysfunction and there's a complete disconnect. But maybe that person doesn't know that they've actually had some type of ancestral trauma or some type of experience in their life where they have actually imprinted on their bodies. But here's the good thing is that, like I said earlier, for as much trauma there is in the body, there is that much wisdom. So your body also knows how to come back into wholeness. So I work with people to support them in discovering and unfolding their sexual wholeness. Okay, orgasm is energy. In heightened states of full body orgasm, the peak frequencies of the brain can be altered much like being in a hypnagogic state. So hypnagogic is an altered state, and when we enjoy a journey of sacred technology or sacred fungi, we also go into a hypnagogic state. So back in 2017, my husband and I were part of an incredible research experience with neuroscientist Dr. Juan Costurquidi, and rest in peace, the late Dr. Juan. We worked with my QEEG readings, my brain readings. So in this particular research, what we did was my husband and I, we, in a 20-minute increment, produced orgasmic energy in my body through him stroking my clitoris. So it's very still, so brain readings could be read. And a lot of times people say, well, if you're in an orgasm, aren't you flailing around? A lot of times people misconstrue orgasmic energy, which is what Baba Mudu was talking about, that life force fluid energy, and climax. Climax is the release of that energy. And with people with ovaries, we have a lot of that. We actually create that energy. That's why we're mammals. We go into heat, and the masculine responds to that energy. So my body was in heat or in full body orgasm for 20 minutes, and then there was a self-touch component. And so we took my brainwave readings with the baseline reading, and what we found was in this time, my peak frequencies, the frequencies that we took at the baseline, actually changed. They changed, and my body was put into a state of theta state and started to heal itself. And so the great thing about Dr. Juan is that his primary research over the past 25 years was taking QEEG readings of shamans around the world and people who took psychedelics. He himself was a shaman, and towards the end of his life, he launched me on Bufo, and I was starting to apprentice with Dr. Juan as well with 5-MeO-DMT. So orgasm is the breath of God. So mushrooms are everywhere. This isn't new information, but it might be new to you. So these are all pictures I've taken across my travels. The Temple of Philae, Demeter, Persephone in Sicily. You can see Demeter, giving her daughter Persephone psychedelics. So there's a long-standing wisdom and mystery around the divine feminine Kundalini energy in healing with our own bodies, that in these times is becoming much more appreciated. But 20 years ago, if I should say the word orgasm or clitoris, people would cringe. And so it's been a long-standing time, but I'm just so grateful that we're at the time in our society where I can actually come to an academic university and have these types of conversations. And we need them more now than ever, because your pleasure is your greatest form of resistance. Once again, here's the Temple of Philae, Egypt. And by the way, when I've gone to these locations, I've always brought sacred technology with me. So one of the ways I'm able to connect with the temples and the energies of the temples is through technology. So I also get that benefit of having that experience put into my genetic coding as well. Okay. If you want to know a little bit more about this, I wrote a short paper about this. To the best of my knowledge, combining somatic sex education, tools such as sexological body work with the use of psilocybin mushrooms to heal sexual and ancestral trauma is a new concept, but it's not. Sex and psychedelics have been explored generally with the focus on pleasure-based experiences. And I have not encountered extensive research on the topic, on the use of sacred technology and somatic practices like genital de-armoring and such. So my training in somatic sex education and sexological body work does not condone the use of psilocybin and does not teach this. So this has been a complete journey of my own healing, where I decided to impart this information into my body, and I started microdosing back in 2018 again. But I have been a user of entheogen since I was 27, so I'm 50 now. So for a long time. My first mushroom journey was in the Apache Junction desert in Arizona, where somebody said, like many people, here's some mushrooms, take these and go take a walk into the desert. Which I did. And so I danced all night. And of course, that began my journey at 23 of a lifelong explorer of my mind, heart, body, and spirit. And I believe that's it. So in conclusion, this journey of healing the soma, the living body, when we can't access it solely through desiring to shift and embody our sexuality, can be made simpler and more pleasurable when we utilize psilocybin microdosing and touch at the same time. And why touch? Because touch allows our brain to actually feel all the parts of our body, and it tells our brain that we're safe. We're safe enough. We're creating safety within. We can't come to a space, you hear that term, oh, this is a safe space. Well, actually, it's probably not, because your body has been programmed, and many people have been already programmed through epigenetics to face the world with anxiety, and that's not your normal state of being. So in order to go through and shift this, we have to create brave spaces, and we have to, start understanding that it starts with our own self-healing, healing our own bodies, falling in love. Like, what happens when you have oxytocin going to your brain, whether through orgasmic energy or through sacred technology and fungi? You start to fall in love with yourself. You start to make your body the temple. You become the god or the goddess. And that is why this journey of combining the two neuroreceptors of orgasmic energy and psilocybin is so important. And once we get to that place within ourselves of being able to feel, feeling is healing, and then we can jump into those high doses, and that's a whole nother realm. So, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.